Hi there, I'm Dr. Josephine G. Figueroa. Today we will be discussing the units of competency in trainer's methodology, apply environmental principles, advocate conservation. And the unit code for this competency is 500-232-102. The unit descriptor. This unit covers the knowledge, skills, and attitude required to apply or adapt environmental principles, advocate conversation in diverse technical vocational training environments, including the observing and contributing to positive environmental work practices. This covers the following environmental work practices, contributing to improvements of environmental practices, and reporting potential environmental threats. And for the objectives, we have three objectives. First, explain the environmental principles of conservation. Second is apply the environmental principles and conservation. And the last one is to cite the significance of environmental conservation. For the first element, we have follow the environmental workplace practices. For the performance criteria in follow environmental workplace practices, the first one is to the workplace practices and work instructions relating to potential environmental impacts are recognized and followed, and clarification is sought when necessary. So it is important that you have to let your learners or your trainees to follow the workplace and work instruction relevant to legislations, codes, and national standards that impact on the workplace environmental practices are recognized and followed, which will be discussed later. So, what are the different code and legislations? And second, and the third one, changes to work practices. Procedures are responded to positively and promptly in accordance with organizational requirements. So, if you are going to give an example of what took place nowadays when there were changes in the workplace when we had this kind of pandemic. So when the IATF required us to adjust in the workplace or in the work practices, then we made an adjustment because we need to follow the what are required to us. And for the number four, individual roles and responsibilities are determined and performed based on the program and activities identified. And so it is important that we have to follow strictly the session guide and to make everyone be safety in our workplace station. Second element is contribute to improve environmental work practices. And the question is, how can you contribute to improve our environmental work practices? For the performance criteria in contributing to improve environmental work practices, we have the following. 2.1, suggestions are made designated personnel for improvements to workplace practices where possible. Second is information is gathered and improvements are suggested to support the development or improved workplace approaches to environmental practices. And it is very important that we have to listen the different suggestions and voice of our trainees so that we can improve the workplace and make protect our environment. 2.3 is environmental issues, and their relationship to workplace practices is discussed in workplace with colleagues and designated personnel. So, what are examples of environmental issues? If we think that something there is something stagey, that there is no good air circulation, and other issues that we can help to improve our environment. So this will be discussed with our colleagues, with our trainees, so we can improve and we can do something. So when you say contribute, you have to do something. You do not wait for your colleagues. You do not wait for your leader to ask you to do it, but you yourself should do an initiative. What you can help to improve your work environment. For number three, we have to recognize and report the potential environmental threats. So, what are the performance criteria in this kind of element? The following are the performance criteria in recognizing and reporting the potential environmental threats. The first one is what the signs, what are the signs and symptoms of the potential environmental threats are recognized. So at first, if you know that there is already a sign or symptoms that may threat on our environment, then you have to report. Second is information about the observations of a potential environmental threats are reported to supervisors and or appropriate authorities. So as a member or as a trainee or as a member of the organization or in the training methodologies, if you have seen symptoms, if you have heard information, then you have to report immediately to the authorities or to the supervisors for them to make an action immediately. Third is the location and extent of the potential environmental threat is accurately recorded. So whatever when you have start when this threat has started, what happened after it was reported, what actions have you done, what happened when you have acted on the report, then everything should be recorded. And number four is reports on the potential environmental threats are completed accordingly to the organizational guidelines. So as a leader, you should have a complete reports on these potential threats to your environment so that when this happens, when you were not able to provide solutions, when this problem occurred in your environmental workplace, you have the record that you have done something, that you did not just tolerate whatever environmental threats that were reported in your particular organization or in your workplace station. Now we will be discussing the range of variables for this environmental workplace. The first variable is workplace practices and work instruction. For the workplace practices and work instructions, so this may include but not limited to producers or work instructions for number one, environmental hazard identification and risk analysis. Second is avoiding or minimizing environmental risk. So as a member of the or as the member of the training methodology or as a trainee or as trainer, what will you do to avoid or minimize the environmental risk? Third is improving environmental performance. So what can you contribute to improve environmental performance? And waste minimization, and segregation. And it is as a trainee and as a trainer, you should help also to discuss this, how you can help to minimize the way to minimize the waste, or know how to segregate the waste. On number 1.5 is environmental monitoring. It's not just for the trainer. It's not just enough that you will just be providing training to our trainees, but it's also a must for a trainer that you have to monitor the environment. So you should have to know how you are going to protect your environment. And then you have to provide signs and labels to avoid accidents. If you think you will be using, there are, you have, if you are in cookery, everything should be labeled, just like sugar. White sugar is almost similar with salt. So if you are cooking and you are will be needing sugar, and it so happened that you were able to use the salt because there was no label in it, so what will happen that you will just be having more, you will just be wasting your resources. So to avoid accident, to protect your environment, everything should be labeled, especially when these are chemicals. Okay? And emergency procedures. So if there are emergency, in if for the emergency procedures, this should also be explained to your trainees. And in your environmental workplace, there should be an emergency procedures where they are going to go if in case there will be an emergency. And for 1.8, hazards and incidents recording and reporting procedures, and it is very important that everything should be recorded when there was an incident in any kind of incident that took place in your uh, environmental workplace. It should be reported, it should be recorded and be reported. For 1.9, environmental data recording and reporting procedures where applicable. And 1.10 is environmental instructions or verbal instructions from persons with responsibility related to environmental work practices. If there is a person who is tasked to protect or to provide or to help to maintain the environmental workplace, then you should have to provide verbal instruction. It's not enough that you will just be sending letter, or you will just be texting to the person who is responsible for the environmental protection. So what is important, you have to provide verbal instruction. Okay. Next variable is about legislations, codes, and national standards. So everyone should know in the workplace what are the different legislations and national standards that should be observed. The legislation, codes, and national standards may include the following. 2.1, we have the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1989. RA 8749. 2.2, we have the Philippine Clean Water Act of 2004, Republic Act 9275. 2.3, we have Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, Republic Act 9003. Then we have the Montreal Protocol, Kyoto Protocol, Then we have Environmental Awareness of Education Act of 2008 or Republic Act 9512, and the Philippine Climate Change of 2009 RA 9729, and 2.8 Codes of Practice in Relating to Environmental Critical Jobs. So, and as a trainee again, a trainee and a trainers, you should have to observe all of these legislations, codes, and national standards for us to protect our environment. And it is very important that it's not just after that you have to learn, or it's not enough that you are earning, but at the same time you have to protect our environment, and you have to follow all of these legislations for you to avoid the problem. If you violate this one, then really you will have problems. So it is important, sabi nga natin, ignorance of the law excuses no one. So it is important again that everyone should know, should be aware all of this acts, and you should have to observe this one strictly. The third variable is all about suggestions. What are these suggestions? What are the suggestions that you have to suggest to our students so we can protect our workplace environment? What are the suggestions? These suggestions may include, but not limited to, the ideas. 3.1 is to minimize the hazards and risks. So, minimize, you have to suggest your trainees to minimize the hazards and risk. And how can we, again, how can you help them to minimize the hazards and risk? Through proper orientations. You have to orient them how they can avoid or minimize hazards and risks. 3.2 is to reduce and dispose of waste. And if you are teaching, if you are providing training in cookery as a trainer, how can you help to reduce and dispose of waste? So think about it, because this will be a part of your activity. Okay? And efficient use of energy. Efficient use of energy. At home, how can you make use efficiently of your energy? In a workplace environment, how can you help your workplace environment to conserve energy or make use of an efficient energy? Then 3.4 is to conserve water. If you can conserve water, if you how can you all of us, no, especially this time, uh, all everything goes higher. Our electric bill, water bill, okay, nagsipagtaasan na. So efficient use of energy, if you are not using your, if you are not using your electricity, if you are not using your gadget, then turn it off. How about water? How about water in a workplace? How can you conserve water? If you are washing the dishes, then you can get some water in a pail and put your pail, rather than put water in the pail and use some water, the deeper, and use those in washing the dishes, rather than using the tap water that continues running the water. Okay, so you can conserve water. There are so many ways how we can conserve water. So let's try to teach or adopt this water conservation so we can help our environment. Okay? And reduce air and noise pollution. So air pollution, how can you help reduce air and noise pollution? What are these air and noise pollution? So, and how you can reduce, okay? And now 3.6 is make more efficient use of resources and improve environmental performance. You know, there are so many ways. Use of make use of resources. If you think if you can recycle your paper, do it so. You will be saving a lot of trees. If it is not necessary to use paper, then don't use it. If it is not necessary to use plastics, then don't use plastic because that could not. You should have to know what are the biodegradable, what are the non-biodegradable materials, so you can help to improve our environment performance. Okay. And for 3.7 is reduce soils disturbance and important habitat resources. So it's all about reduce soil disturbance and improve habitat resources. So if you can help to reduce, then do it. Okay, and do the initiative, your own initiative. Don't ask your leader, don't ask anybody to do it for you, to help you do it, but start it from yourself. So these are the suggestions that will help us to conserve our environment. So our next variable is designated personnel. Who are the designated personnel? The designated personnel may include but are limited to: number one are the administrators or the managers. Second are the supervisors. Third, the people who are responsible for the work area or who may be assigned to act as a mentor or a trainer to a person. So these are the people who are responsible in the advocacy campaign or the advocate in the environmental conservation. Number five variable refers to workplace approaches to environmental practices. On our workplace approaches to environmental practices, this may include but not limited to: number one, preventing and minimizing the production of pollution. Example of this are discharges to air, land, water, and hazardous waste. So, as trainee, and as a trainer, how can you contribute to prevent and minimize the production of the pollution? So, avoid using the materials that will cause pollution. Second is reducing burning off. Reducing burning off. It's a no to senro in burning materials. It will cause air pollution. Burning leaves. So instead of burning the leaves, grasses, you just learn how to compost. And burning plastics, that will not help to our environment. So if you could not help, if you could not, if in throwing plastics, you just don't have to throw it anywhere, or you don't have to burn it. So learn how to dispose the waste properly so we can help to conserve our environment. Next is composting. How do you compost? What are the materials that you compost? And what are the purpose of composting the materials? So if you are teaching cookery, the peeling of the fruits, vegetables, and all the waste in cookery, you do not have to throw it. You can have it in compost. And this compost material can help as our fertilizer, and this will help to have our plants grow better. And you can be productive of this. Okay? And of even our, even the when you are washing the fish, when you are washing the rice, no? Kapag naghuhugas kayo ng mga rice, you know what? You don't have to throw the water. You don't have to throw the water. You can help it. You can make those liquid, no? You can make those liquid to water the plants, di ba? Para it will make into fertilizer, para mas nutrients yan at pakikinabangan pa ng halaman rather than throwing it away. So, lalo-lalo na we are referring to composting, no? In composting, mas madali tumubo ang halaman if you are using the compost materials that will serve as fertilizer of our plants. Next is recycling materials. Now, as how do you recycle materials? Learn when I was a teacher, as I was telling you before, no, I had this project 3 R's for 3 G's. Now this 3 R's for 3 G's stands for reduce, reuse, and recycle for green garbage generation. Now I taught the students to recycle the materials and sometimes make this into income generating. We have so many ways how to recycle the materials. All everything is available in YouTube, in the internet. So, sabi nga natin, if there is a will, there is a way, no? It's so nice to recycle the materials, no? And when you are done with it, you can really appreciate the beautiful of the material that you have recycled. And it's not just na you are being thrifty, no? You are economizing. So what is important is you can help to conserve our environment. We can help to conserve safety workplace. Okay? So the next is conservation practices. Kaya nga, you teach your trainees to practice the conservation. It's not just that you are good in preaching, you are good in talking, but you have to walk your talk. Okay? Improving the workplace maintenance practices like using the broom instead of a hose, right? So, when you are cleaning, no, when you are cleaning, instead of using the hose, no, you will be using a lot of water. Gagamit ka ng maraming tubig when you are cleaning, no? So you use the broom, you sweep it first, no, linisin mo muna rather than using the hose because you will be wasting a lot of water. Okay? Using environment-friendly cleaning agents. So, when you are using soaps, tapos ilalagay mo lang sa mga halaman, no? When you are using fertilizers, when you are spraying insecticide, this will not be friendly environment. This will not help in our environment. So, as possible, you have to use the natural cleaning agents, the natural insecticide, no? Para you can contribute how to conserve our environment. Number 6 refers to environmental issues. What are the different issues that may take place in the workplace? For the environmental issues, this may include the following. Number 1 is sustainability. As a trainer, how can you sustain these environmental issues? So when you have to solve a problem, when you have issues in the environment and you have the solutions, then the problem is how are you going to sustain? Because the problem or the solution should not be good for a day, but you should have a project, you should have a solution that is sustainable. Second is reduction and disposal of waste. What are your waste? What are your waste in the production and disposal of waste? So because these are one of the issues in the environment. So you have to find ways how you are going to reduce and dispose your waste. The third is water quality. So how do you maintain your water quality? Okay? How do you maintain the proper use of your water, the proper use of your disposal of your water? So you have to find it. You have to find you should have the way on how to sustain this issue. Second, the fourth one is energy efficiency. We have mentioned in other previous slide on how you can maintain your energy. The use of energy when no one is working in the workplace, then turn off the light. So see to it that your refrigerator is closed properly. If there is nobody around and the electric fan is on, then turn it off. Okay, so you can help a lot in conserving energy. And biodiversity and habitat protection, conservation of natural resources, air quality, land contamination. So these are the different environmental issues. Noise pollution, another environmental issues. Soil and salinity management, and the last one is fire management. So these are the different environmental issues that should be given attention by the trainer and trainees. Number seven pertains to environmental practices and policies. And this we will be guided in environmental practices and policies. For environmental practices and policies, this may include one is waste minimization and management. So it was also mentioned that as possible, no, minimize, reduce, okay? So you have to do this, okay? Kasi sinasabi lang it was been repeated even in the previous slide, no? Sinasabi niya na you have to reduce, you have to minimize, you have know how to manage your waste, no? And then sustainability, again, it was mentioned, local, regional, state, and national strategies on weed and pest management, so it will be observed. And then protection of land and habitat of conservation of resources, energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and the use of chemicals and plant equipment. So this is in the environmental practices and policies that should be observed both trainees and trainers. Number eight, know the signs or symptoms. What are those signs and symptoms? And these are the following signs and symptoms may include but not limited to. The first one is observation of the presence of weeds. What about the weeds? What's something to do with our workplace environment? So if you think that you are seeing weeds are growing, then what if these weeds, syempre pag weeds, they are not helpful, no? That may be other these weeds will just get nutrients from our use from the other useful plants. Okay, so what you are going to do if the weeds are sprouting, then you have to uproot, di ba? Tanggalin mo kasi that will help also, sabi ko nga kanina, no? The weeds may just get other nutrients which are intended for our plants, di ba? So what you are going to do is to remove these weeds. Then pest animals or chemicals. So if you have seen pest animals or chemicals in the kitchen, then you have to remove it, or you have to take it away from the kitchen, and you have to label it to, so our learners or our trainees will be aware that these are chemicals or these are pests for the these are pests, or you just have to remove the pest. Of course, you are not going to you are not going to keep it. So if there are chemicals in the kitchen, you have to label it. If you see pests or animals in your workplace area, then you have, it means na your workplace is not clean, di ba? Kapag nakakita na kayo ng mga ipis, daga sa inyong workplace, di ba? Dapat mag-isip-isip kayo, kasi it is already a sign that your workplace is not clean. Okay? Then, damage caused to plants, animals, or the environment. So kapag if you are looking at, tapos nakikita mo, you are looking at in your environment, nakikita mo nagkakamatay na yung halaman, na may namamatay na hayop or any animals, no? So tingnan mo what causes the dying of plants, di ba? What causes of dying these plants? What causes of dying of dying animals, di ba? So titingnan mo, because these are already signs. Baka yung itinatapon yung tubig, hindi maganda sa halaman, hindi, it's no longer, it's not good to our environment, then you have to find ways, di ba, na para you can resolve this problem. And then changes in plants, nakita, dieback of trees, animal health. So titingnan mo yan, na ibig sabihin kapag nakikita mo na, you have to watch out din. Sabi ko nga, tinitingnan mo, dapat lagi kang observant. You should be a keen observer of your environment. Soil erosion. How do you know that there is a symptoms or the signs of soil erosion? So nakikita mo sa kapaligiran mo, nagbabagsakan na o naglalaglagan yung mga bato. Huwag mo nang hintayin na lumakas ang ulan, na talagang magkameron ng soil erosion. So nakita mo na there's already a sign, then you have to do something. And then soils in water suspension, di ba? So titingnan mo rin, then presence of salt. What is all about has something to do with the presence of salt, di ba? Kung if your workplace malapit sa dagat, no? Syempre, kapag yung mga materials mo are just aluminum, tapos hindi sila they are not hindi sila pwede sa mga salt spray. So tinitingnan mo din yan. You know what are the signs and symptoms, no, in the presence of salt, na pwede sila makasira sa ating mga kagamitan or in our workplace. So these are the things that you should be aware, no, of the signs and symptoms when this already starts to appear. Okay? Number 9 refers to potential environmental threats and hazards. So what are these? The different environmental threats and hazards. The following are the potential environmental threats and hazards that may include but not limited to. Number 1, this includes spills, leaks, pollution, planned and unplanned emissions, soil compactions, disturbance, and erosion. So when you have seen that there are spills, no, or there are leaks that may pollute to our environment, so what will you do, di ba? Halimbawa, in our workplace na lang, if you have seen a spill of oil, di ba? So do not wait until somebody gets slide. O ang gawin mo, punasan mo na agad, ano? Do not tolerate na that there will be an accident in your workplace. Pest, animals, or we have this accidents and disposal of waste and damage or disruptions of ecosystem resulting from a workplace practices. So, mali yung pagtapon mo ng basura, or lumipad yung plastic, pagkatapos dumating isang trainee, napaka niya yung plastic, nag-slide siya, and that will cause accident, no? So, you have to know, you have to identify what could be this environmental threats and hazards that may cause in your environment, no? So, the next is include plants, animals, and diseases that are classified as an environmental threats and problem and hazard. So, nakita mo in your environment, may inaamag sa dishes mo, sa dishwashing area mo, meron ng madulas-dulas, meron ng molds, no? So, this may cause threats, no? This may cause also problem. Baka mamaya mayroon ng ng poison sa area mo. So, hindi po maganda yan. So, ang gagawin mo, nakita mo na these are potential threats and hazards in our environment. Tanggalin mo na agad, linisin mo na agad, okay? Then, unauthorized changes in land use. So dapat if you want to change something, then you have to ask permission to the authority. Fire risk, threats, and inappropriate human interaction and then environment. So what you are going to do, no, when you are in the workplace area, in the workplace environment, avoid smoking. That may cause also threats or problems in your work environment, no? Hindi yung pag natap o kaya nagsindi ka, you use match dahil hindi sumindi yung ating gas range, no? Pagkatapos bigla mong itinapon, tapos meron pa pala siyang apoy, no? That may also cause fire. Okay, and this another for the last one in the potential environmental threats and hazard is these may include damage of the habitat resources, disruption of the animal behavior and territorial use, illegal vegetation, clearance, seed collection, firewood gathering, nest disturbances, and egg collecting. So these are the different potential hazard that you should have not that you should have to avoid. Okay, so this is for the number 9. This time we will be dealing with the evidence guide. What are the evidence guide that need our trainees to produce that will serve as a proof that our trainees are competent in terms of applying the environmental conservation. The first evidence guide is critical aspects of competency. So these are the different critical aspects of competency that our students should have to perform as the evidence that they were able to acquire all the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitude that pertains to an application of environmental conservation. The first one is the students are able to demonstrate the knowledge and workplace practices and work instruction. The second is described relevant legislations and codes and national standards, environmental practices according to the different environmental issues and concern. So we were able to cite the different legislations, the different policies that will guide them in practicing the environmental conservation. Followed environmental workplace practices. Again, it's not enough that you were able to inform our students to teach them, but they have to practice. They have to practice in their workplace station for this different application in environmental conservation. Contributed to the improvement of environmental workplace. So what have they done in order to conserve our environment? Recognized and reported a potential environmental threat. The trainees were able to see some potential threats. Were they able to report it? Were they able to do something? Okay. Then maintained environmental records. So as it was discussed that when there are incidents that took place in their workplace area or in the workplace environment, the trainees or the trainer should have to record. Okay, should have a complete record on when it was when the symptoms or signs started, when these issues occurred, and what have they done. So everything should be recorded. Second evidence guide is underpinning knowledge. What are these critical knowledge that the student should have to acquire? For the underpinning knowledge as evidence of our students have relevant legislations from all levels of government on environmental issues. So they should have knowledge on all the relevant legislation. Then relevant environmental policies and workplace or industry practices, procedures, knowledge on good practices, approaches, and relevant to work area, particularly in regard to minimizing environment hazards and risk and improving environmental performance. And the third knowledge that we should have to know or to acquire is are the different environmental issues, especially in regard to water catchments, issues in noise, air pollution, ecosystems, habitat, efficient use of resources, and sustainability and waste minimization. For number five, knowledge on the potential environmental threats and problems relevant to the given region and occupation. Baka mamaya, students have seen it already, they have seen the sign, but they were not able to recognize this. Okay? So next is at the another underpinning knowledge that the student should have to acquire are the general work practices in their potential impact on the environment. The third evidence guide is underpinning skills. What are these skills that the students should possess to have their national competence in terms of environmental conservation? The underpinning skills that the student should possess as their evidence are the following. First is performing research and analysis, reading and interpreting data and information, problem solving, communicate with supervisors and workplace colleagues, recognize basic environmental hazards and threats, follow the workplace direction and instructions, and keep simple records. So these are the following underpinning skills that our students should possess as their evidence guide. The fourth evidence guide is resource implications. The following resource implications must be provided. One, workplace or assessment location. So it is a must that there is a work assessment or a workplace location. Legislation, policies, procedures, and protocols, and local ordinances relating to environmental protection, and case studies or scenarios relating to environmental protection. So these are must that must be provided to our number five evidence guide is we are referring to methods of assessment. What are the different methods of assessment that the student should have? The different methods of assessment, we have the following. First is written or oral examination. Second, we can have interview, third-party reports. Number three are the portfolios that we are asking for our trainees. This has citations, awards from GOs, NGOs, certificate of trainings, local and abroad. And the last one is a simulation. And last but not the least, evidence guide is context for assessment. At this juncture, our trainees are now ready to be assessed on the different competencies that they were acquired in an actual workplace or at the designated test center. For your reflection, this will be posted on our Google Classroom. For our activity in this lesson in application of environmental conservation is that you will have to develop an advocacy campaign in environmental conservation na limited to 1 minute, maximum of 3 minutes video. This is an individual work. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any follow up questions, you can always contact me. You can always post it through our messenger. Thank you.